So, talk about series I'm in the middle of. Let's talk about some of the series that I want to read. Coming up soon. Right after this. Hi, I'm Pete. This is the Ponderings of Pete. And I read fantasy. I read sci-fi. I read some other stuff sometimes. But mostly fantasy sci-fi. And today, we are going to talk about books, specifically series, that I really want to read, but have not yet really popped up on my TBR, but I hope to make a space for them soon. I wish I could make this an hour-long video, but it would be an hour-long video if I did not condense it to 10. I think I have about 20 to, somewhere between 20 and 30. I think it's close to 20 series that came to mind. And then I'd break it down to 10. And originally I think I was going to put like 4 different honorable mentions, but I'm only going to put 2. So this is in reality going to be about 12 different series. With some honorable mentions, and then the top 10 series that I'm looking forward to. So, without further ado, as everybody says, let's talk about some books. Honorable mentions. Start off with those, because that's how these videos normally go. The first one is the Booktubers Trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. I don't know how to pronounce this name. I'm sorry. But the Booktubers Trilogy, starting with The City of Brass. I actually recently bought the first one of this because I saw it at the thrift store and I was like, I want to read this eventually, so I'm going to put it on the physical TBR side. This is a book series that has been I've seen around Booktube in a lot of different places, and so I got excited about it. It's, it takes place in, I think, 18th century Cairo. Is an alternative history book where magic is real, the jinn are real, and a chick that doesn't really believe in magic kind of gets caught up in conspiracies and some other things in this magical world. I think it's a little YA, but I think the world definitely really, really intrigues me, and I want to read this mainly because of the world building and the writing. So that's that. The other honorable mention that I want to mention is the Origin Mystery Series by A.G. Riddle, starting with the Atlantis Gene. This one was recommended to me by my good friend Michael Nip, and yeah, he really loved this series, and so that's one reason why there's 1 or 2 series. There's like 2 or 3 different series actually that were on the original list that I wanted to put on this, but I wanted to put this one on here because I do have the first book and I do really want to start this series at some point. Essentially, at the beginning of the first book, there's a mysterious structure found in Antarctica, and a researcher creates a genetic breakthrough for autism treatment. Is it really a breakthrough for autism treatment, or is it something weird genetic things happening, and how are they connected? So, knowing his taste, there's conspiracies abound and just some crazy wild stuff that goes on in these books to make him really excited about it. So that's kind of his excitement transfers to my excitement, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I like this. So, there's that. And that is the end of the honorable mentions. Let's get down to the top 10, shall we? Number 10, that's how many 10 is, not whatever I was doing, is the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn Trilogy by Tad Williams. This is a very classical epic fantasy. So you have, written a while ago, is actually an inspiration for George R.R. Martin. And I've heard that it was doing things that Martin was doing before Martin was doing them, which is why it was an inspiration. So that intrigues me. I think I'm getting into this phase of, I'm reading some of these great authors, and and they have these things listed as their influences. I want to read those influences and see how that affected them. Or that's something that's been in the back of my mind for a little bit. And you'll see something. And this isn't the only one that's like this. But this one, you have a king who's dying, and his 2 sons have to figure out who's going to be on the throne, and there's some other stuff going on. Conspiratorial, secrets. So that's like, ooh. So that's Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. It's 3 books. They get progressively bigger to the point as if you're doing paperback, you have to get 4 books because the last book has to be split in 2 because it's just so thick. So yeah, I want to get introduced to Tad Williams as an author and possibly read some of his books and see if I like them. Number 9 is another Booktube darling, I would say. I mean, there's some contention because there's some people that don't like it, of course. And that is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. So what I know about this, I know that it takes place in the Banished Lands, which is a war-torn country, war-torn world. Wars between humans and giants have raged for eons or whatever. And there's another war coming. That's about all I know exactly about it. I have read another of John Gwynn's books, which was Shadow of the Gods, which I thought was really good. It definitely had its flaws, but it was intriguing enough and good enough to me to make me want to read more of his stuff. So, in comes Faithful and the Fallen. This has been on my TBR probably since I started Booktube, but because I have so many, because it's technically not just a 4-book series, but an 8-book series. I have so many big series going on, like Malazan and starting into Realm of the Etterlings and Wheel of Time. I've been kind of like pushing it off until I know I'm going to have a huge chunk of time, a huge chunk of like 8 months back to back to back that I can reasonably think that I can get through this. It is something that I do want to put on my list, but because of its size, I think its size definitely put it lower on the list because it's going to take more of an investment for me to get into it. TBR investment, or if you want to say. The number 8, what are we on? 8? 8. 8 has a similar kind of thing to it. And that is the First Law Trilogy and all of Joe Abercrombie's novels in that world, whether it's his 2 trilogies or his 3 standalones that he has in the middle. I've heard a lot about Joe Abercrombie, and his Age of Madness trilogy actually really intrigues me. Like, that's really what I want to get to. But I know I need to read the first 6 first, and that because even if you don't need to, I don't know if you don't need to, but like I want to read the first 6 first because I'm just so like, yes, I have to read the first. If there's books and there's a normal order, I'm going to read them in the normal order, even if I really want to read that 3rd trilogy. That's just how I am. I'm weird. The First Law Trilogy is where it starts, and then you have the Age of Madness in the end, and in the middle you have those 3 standalones. Grimdark, like this is Lord Grimdark himself, as his Twitter handle says. The characters I've heard are really good, and I'm hyped for some good characters. I also definitely would like the plot to be good, but it's one of those things where I want to see what everybody's talking about. I want to get in on the talking because it's Joe Abercrombie. Next up, number 7. Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. This is also a bit of a longer series, but it's also a bunch of novellas, so it's not going to take that much of an investment in one novel, I think. This is about a robot that is designed to kill people, I think, in some way, shape, or fashion, but he doesn't like it, and he likes soap operas, and that sounds hilarious and really funny. So I've heard another Booktube. I've heard a lot about this one from a lot of different of my friends. So yeah, Murderbot Diaries is definitely something I really want to get into, and probably gonna be easier to get into it because it's a bunch of novellas in one novel. So hopefully I plan on actually starting this one next year, but we'll see how it actually goes. Number 6. The middle one's kind of like flip-flopped around. But number 6 goes to Octavia E. Butler's series, starting with Parable of the Sower. I think it's a trilogy. I could be wrong, but I've heard a lot of good things about Parable of the Sower. It's a really, is intellectual, a good way of putting it, series about a lady that I think she eventually ends up doing some interesting things with religion and talking about that in a sci-fi kind of aspect, sci-fi or fantasy type of aspect. So that's kind of like, it's Octavia Butler. Like I don't think I've actually read any Octavia Butler, which is a shame. She is one of 2 authors that I'm like, I haven't read anything by them yet that are on this list that I really want to read. So her, and then, spoiler alert, N.K. Jemisin are 2 people that I've heard are really, really, really smart with their writing, and that excites me. So, Parable of the Sower. Next up is number 5, and that is another inspirational book, The Black Company by Glenn Cook. Black Company is not inherently an inspirational book, as in it is, yay, woohoo, self-help. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Black Company is one of the book series that helped inspire Malazan, Book of the Fallen, Steven Erikson, Ian Esselmont, some of their inspirations for the Bone Hunters and the Bridge Burners come from Black Company. Like that's their kind of, not like rip off, but like inspirations. So this is another series that I got the first book for, and I want to get started with that to see those inspirations and see where that came from. Just because from an analytical perspective, it's kind of like, and from a writing perspective, it's like, okay, what's a good, healthy form of inspiration, and where's the line between inspiration and rip off? That's an interesting book topic. Next up, number 4. This won't be a surprise because I already mentioned her, but N.K. Jemisin, The Inheritance Trilogy. So The Inheritance Trilogy is probably the first Jemisin I read. I've been told not to do that, but I will ignore it because I just really am intrigued by the Inheritance Trilogy. The Inheritance Trilogy is a fantasy series that is told in the second person. And I'm like, ooh, that's new and different. I want to read it. And because the trilogy is not in the same world as other books, I'm fine with reading it first. So I'm going to read this one. Because I actually already have the first one, because that kind of makes it easier on me. Because I do want to read it. That's why it's before, because it's so interesting. And if you want to blame anybody for making you want to read this, you would probably blame Angela at the Literature Science Alliance, because she's been going on about Jemison for a while. She's a huge Jemison fan. So I got excited, and I'm definitely influenced by other people's excitement, because that's just the type of person I am. Now let's get on to number 3, which I literally just have listed anything by K.J. Parker. Initially, I had The Folding Knife here, and then I was doing my research. I realized that The Folding Knife was not in a series, but I'm really excited to read The Folding Knife at some point, because Folding Knife is a fantasy that has commentaries on power and people coming into it. Themes like that I'm interested in, just because like leadership is cool. Leadership's interesting. The psychology of leadership is also very interesting to me. And he also has a series called The Siege. Starts with 16 ways to defend a walled city. I believe Alan has this on his Quest for Flintlock Fantasy. So that's kind of why I want to read that. But The Folding Knife was kind of like the here, so I'm kind of cheating and putting The Siege sort of on it and putting anything KJ Parker here, because he's an author that I want to get into, because he seems interesting. Now, we are into the top 2. You want to know what they are? All right. This is another one that you can blame Angela at the Literature Science Alliance for, and that is The Machineries of Empire by Yoon Ha Lee. And the first one is the Nine Fox Gambit. So this is another one that Angela gushed about, and I was like very intrigued about it because of that, because of some of the things that she said in her gush. Essentially, it is about, the first one starts off with a disgraced captain is told to go siege this impenetrable fortress. And then in order to do that, she's advised by an undead general, which is kind of just like, oh, okay, this is different, new and different, who never lost a battle. In fact, his last battle was, he ended up massacring his own troops along with everybody else, evidently. So that's okay. That's kind of crazy. So he hasn't lost a battle, even though he's undead now. But seeing that in a blatantly sci-fi novel is like, oh, this is cool and different. Let's look into this. And the like, look at the cover. Like, that's a space fortress. Like, that's just that's some cover art right there. So cover art definitely will draw me in sometimes. And this is a case of some of the things that I heard and the cover art were just like, I actually have the first 2 in the series. And it's a trilogy, so that makes me more likely to get into it in maybe early next year. Number 1. So this number 1 is from my latest auto-buy author that I have. Don't have everything he's written, but it's going to get there at some point. But like, I just finished this one series that you know about by this author. And it's just, he's great. Daniel Abraham's The Dagger and the Coin series. Starting off with The Dragon's Path. Daniel Abraham is phenomenal and amazing. Like, Long Price Quartet was beautiful, and everybody should read it. And this is another one of his series. It talks about the differences between economic and military might, which one really wins battles, which is like, ooh, fantasy economics. This pleases my accounting brain. So yeah, Daniel Abraham is amazing, and I want to read more of his stuff. So that's why I'm going to read it soon, eventually, at some point. I think it's a trilogy as far as I know. Might be a duology. But I'm going to read it, hopefully next year. I think I have it slated for January, actually. We'll see. That's some of the themes that intrigued me. What do you think of this list? What do you think of the books I want to read? Have you read some of these and think they're amazing? Have you read some of these and think they're trash? Are there other series that you want to see me read? Let me know. It's entirely possible that those series were probably on the list, but they weren't the top 10. Thanks for watching. You're amazing. And get some rest, because that's important.